Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
You know, it was a good weekend when, after we get home from Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA, Catherine, Evan's fiance, sends us a message, or sends us a picture of Evan asleep watching the Masters. This man fell asleep watching the Masters, all tuckered out.
Yeah, I should not have put my head down on that pillow because I didn't last more than 5 minutes watching.
You bundled up, you had the blanket and everything. I'm like, oh, that guy is zonked.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, it was a great weekend, though. You know,
it's a good tired. It's a good tired that comes from those events, and with 4 of them in the books, they're getting better and more efficient every time. But definitely the energy levels right after we're done, we leave it all on the field, I'll say.
We sure do.
Brad, you made it back with and that was Hank's first Red Wings game too.
That was Hank's first Red Wings game. Yeah, he passed out almost immediately when we got back. We got back to the Airbnb last night and ordered dinner, but in the time it took to order dinner and receive the dinner, Hank was gone. And Mika was still all wound up, and yeah, it was an early night for him, which is pretty rare.
Well, folks, now that we're back home and recovering after Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA, we still wanted to bring you an episode, but as you may have been able to tell via audio so far, if you're not watching on YouTube, this is a remote episode just to accommodate the helping us to recover a little bit. We're still going to bring you some content today. The upcoming days are going to be a little bit different with these episodes. This one may be a bit shorter. We're looking to get a bonus episode out for you soon, which will be the recording of the live episode from Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA. And coming up midweek is a really special interview that we're excited to bring you as well. So bear with us as things look a little bit funky as we head towards the end of the season. But absolutely, we're here with you to bring you the Winged Wheel Podcast. Welcome, folks. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and hockey beyond. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to give you an update on what happened over the last few Red Wings games, or the last couple of Red Wings games, which have been pretty eventful. The less eventful of the two is actually Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA. You almost forget that they had that 13-goal showdown between the Wings and Buffalo prior. A standings update as the Wings head into their last 3 games of the season with just 1 left at the LCA, and they look at what the playoff picture is like across the NHL. So not just the Connor Bedard Lottery, those wildcard races are starting to get pretty intense and going down to the wire, actually. We'll give you a little bit of a recap of the day of Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA, and also let you know what's been happening with players like Carter Mazur, whose first 5 games with Grand Rapids have gone great, as well as Amadeus Lombardi and his role with Flint in the playoffs. And then some general NHL and hockey news. Boston tying a Red Wings record. Tragically for me, the Windsor Spitfires being upset by the Kitchener Rangers as the 8 seed beat the 1 seed in the OHL playoffs. Qunnipiac takes the Frozen Four title, and plenty more before overtime. Before that, a couple of quick items. First, Comedy Night of Hope in benefit of the Jamie Daniels Foundation is April 13th at 6:30 p.m. at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. We encourage you to head out there. Go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org to get your tickets. Special shout out to Crank's Catering for providing dinner and sponsoring the event. It's a great, great time. It all benefits the Jamie Daniels Foundation, Thursday, April 13th at 6:15 p.m. A lot of great laughs and supports the JDF's fight against substance use disorder. So again, jamiedanielsfoundation.org. Secondly, Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA. One quick component of that was a surprise that we had for folks was these co-branded official Detroit Red Wings and Winged Wheel Podcast embroidered hats. So yeah, that's the Winged Wheel Podcast logo on the screen right here, next to obviously the Red Wings logo on front. Awesome to see the Winged Wheel, and they're great hats. I'm wearing.
Yeah, they're
right
really
now.
nice. They're actually they look way better in person too. I know we've tweeted out a bunch of pictures about them, and they still look awesome. But once we finally saw them in person, I was a total believer in them.
Yeah, the quality is fantastic. So if you bought a ticket to Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA, when you entered the beer garden for the post-game event, that's when you would have got your hat. We know not everyone was able to make it. Also, because I am a zombie at those events sometimes, and I'm just trying to do, my best out there. A few people came up and asked if we ran out of the hats, and I thought they meant the beanies at the merch table. So if you came up to me and asked about the hats, and you meant these caps that you got with your ticket, and not the beanies, you can still get your hat afterwards. We have all of them that folks didn't pick up. So what you need to do is email with the same email address that you used to purchase your Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA tickets. Email pod@wingedwheelpodcast.com. Again, that's pod@wingedwheelpodcast.com. And let us know your name and how many tickets. And we will be able to verify that your hat was indeed not picked up. And then we can take care of getting your hat sent out to you. Also, because folks are wondering, we do have extras that we'll be giving away and then using also to raise some support for the Jamie Daniels Foundation over the next little while as well. So we have more to hand out. It's and we're happy to know that it's a hit. Probably something we'll do in the future too. All right, let's cover where the Red Wings are at right now, because they are through 79 games of the season. It is amazing that a week from today, we're going to be talking about the end of the Red Wings season and doing a season in review. But let's start with that Buffalo game. A 7-6 Buffalo win in a shootout in a game where Buffalo really needed to be, they needed those 2 points, and you would almost expect that they would have done what Pittsburgh would have done to Detroit the next game. But Detroit came out firing, and that was a game that they were not willing to let go.
Hurts in the standings collecting meaningless points, but it's good to have that reminder that, the team didn't give up and this team still has some pride and some reasons to play. I don't know how much we can actually take from that game in particular, though. Detroit did come out with some energy. Buffalo obviously matched that energy. It was chaotic. It was messy. It's one of those ones. You know how the coaches in post-game interviews were like, we're just going to throw out that game tape? I feel like both teams probably didn't review that game tape afterwards.
No. The takeaway for the Red Wings was exactly what you said, Brad. The Red Wings stayed in it. And, I tweeted out after the game, it's like, yeah, the Red Wings are points-wise about where we expected them to be. So despite how high the highs were in, say, February or going back to November, they did settle into where kind of they are on paper. Never mind the path that they took to get there and who's hurt and all that. It can be a little bit disappointing to know that it's not really that big of a lurch forward in the rebuild. But this fight, this competitiveness, and the unwillingness to kind of get completely rolled in these games, it's a little bit of like your broad strokes and how does this actually translate to production? It's not a real thing, like a good feeling kind of thing, but it is good to see that this team has the fight in them, because I think, and we've said this a few times over the course of the season, in seasons past, when games got away, they got away and they went away. They have a long way to go still. Like, there is a lot to do before this is a really competitive team in the playoffs, for example. But the fact that they were able to take this to Buffalo, lottery odds be damned, like you said, Brad, when Perron scored that goal, the LCA erupted, and for good reason.
I guess the other nice thing to see from that game is Edvinsson gets his second goal of the season. Mind you, it was mostly just a turnaround wrist shot from the blue line, but hey, you got to get those on net, and it went in, so good for him. And Berggren's now at 15 as well, off a really bad turnover by Buffalo. So yeah, it may have been a loss and an overtime point, but there's still some small victories to take from that game.
Yeah, just to quickly recap the scoring, Zarnik actually had a really nice shot to tie the game for Detroit and open the Red Wings scoring, and Larkin on the power play from none other than Raymond and Seider, which is a stat line we're going to see plenty of over the years to come. Chiasson, as usual, on the power play from Larkin and Raymond. Like you said, Edvinsson also tallied in there with a bank shot that counted. Simon Edvinsson was chuckling as it went in, so it's like, hey, he knows exactly how that puck went in. He doesn't think he scored a highlight reel goal, but it's good to see those going for him. And then, Berggren and then Perron to tie it, to send it to overtime. And then Raymond was the only one who converted in the shootout. One of the big parts of that game, though, was There was a goal that Buffalo scored, and just prior, Jeff Skinner it looked like caught Raymond up high with a cross check, or just intentionally collided with him in the neutral zone, and Larkin peeled away from the Buffalo rush, or the Buffalo scoring opportunity, as it was happening, and was a big factor in why that Buffalo goal went in. And he peeled away to go after Jeff Skinner, and it was pandemonium. Like, he went after him, and Alex Tuck, who's not a small guy, had essentially Larkin in a headlock, trying to hold him back from getting at Skinner, and Larkin was still throwing punches at Skinner, who was essentially goading him. And I don't think he was expecting to eat a fist from Larkin, but Larkin was relentless in going after him. In the same scrum, I think it was Walman got all of Mittelstadt's, shoulder pads, jersey, etc., off of him, and was feeding him. And it was, I don't know about calling it a line brawl, but close enough to it. And some split opinion on whether or not it was good for the Red Wings captain to go defend their young star player in game 79, where the team is not going to, make the playoffs. But at the same time, it did lead to a goal. So what did you guys think of the scrum and Larkin's kind of decision to step away from the play?
Well, it being game 79, and essentially, I think the Red Wings were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, if not almost by that point. That's an argument in favor of doing what he did. We've talked at length over the last few years about how the Red Wings don't have enough, not face punchers is the right word, but guys willing to do this sort of thing when this sort of thing happens. And if this game mattered to the Red Wings in the standings in any positive way, yeah, you'd be furious at Larkin. Like, the goal is way more important than making a point. But given the context, and given how much shit a lot of the Red Wings top players, especially the young guy like Lucas Raymond, have had to go through this year, yeah, you make the point. You're not messing around with our guys anymore. You do not get carte blanche on this. If you cross-check our guy, you're getting punched in the face. The only real criticism I have of the whole thing is I don't think the Red Wings went far enough. Like, if you're in for a penny, you should be in for a pound. And I think too many Red Wings let too many guys off the hook in that scrum. There's 5 guys on the ice for either team, and Jeff Skinner is being, and don't get me wrong, Jeff Skinner should be reacting exactly as it is. Hey, you're going to try and punch me in the face as my team's scoring a goal. I'm going to let you know we just scored a goal, and I'm going to rub that as deep under the skin as I can. So if Alex Tuck is occupied with Dylan Larkin and that's going on, someone else needs to come punch Jeff Skinner in the face. As much as I've got the boomer window cranked open right now, that's the reality of what needs to happen in this situation. Don't half-ass it if you're going to go do it. And obviously Larkin got held, so he couldn't do everything he needed to do. So I would have liked to have seen a few more people jump into the fray. But no, I'm fully on board with doing it. It's the exact perfect time to send a message that, yeah, you can't screw around with us. Unfortunate result. Don't think they went far enough. So, lesson learned. We'll see what Stevie does in response in free agency this summer, if this is an issue that gets addressed.
Yeah. So the takeaway is, if it's a Donnybrook, it's a full Donnybrook. Don't stand around. Everyone throw something. Yeah. I could see the argument, honestly. I was in favor of it, but I'm like, this team has 79 points at the time, or 80 points. I'm like, players like Raymond, players like Berggren, the other team has been beating up on them because they are a little bit easy to push around. And like, that's a fair strategy, but the way to counter that is to go punch them in the nose if they do it too often. So I was in favor of it, but I could absolutely see the argument of, you can't be stepping away from the play if you're trying to put up the front of every game matters, even when you're out. And then I saw Jeff Skinner's face, like, taunting and goading Dylan Larkin. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You don't get to punk on a star player who's a little bit smaller, and then, goad the team captain who's pissed off about it right after. It all became very, very justifiable for me. I can totally sympathize with the other side of it, but I'm with you, Brad. I was like, yeah, you got to square up with him after that. That's a message sending thing right there. Well, that's the Red Wings Buffalo game. They ended up losing that 7-6 in the shootout. They did make it interesting. The folks who really want the tank to be maximized probably groaned a little bit when Perron scored, but it was an exciting goal. And then the Red Wings' next game was, like we said yesterday afternoon, Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA. There was a hot second there where Suter scored to make it 3-1 off a beautiful passing play. I believe the assist ended up going to Copp and Raymond, but overall a great passing play for the Red Wings. But other than that, Pittsburgh just steamrolled them, like dominated them.
Not for the whole game. Let's not forget, 7 minutes into the first period, the shots were 1-0.
That's true, yeah.
So Detroit's strategy of allowing absolutely nothing to happen at either end of the rink was in full effect for about half of the first period there. It was kind of good that we were a little busy during the game because it gave us something else to think about because the game wasn't doing a whole hell of a lot of that. Edvinsson looked more comfortable this game, though. He was on for a couple goals against. I wouldn't say any of them were his fault, but this is the first game we've seen, at least I'd say I've seen him assert himself in the offensive zone multiple times. He had that one ridiculous cutback between two Pittsburgh defenders to end up right in the slot for a pretty good chance. Can't remember if the shot got blocked or what happened after, but yeah, it was good to see him get more comfortable out there. We see him throwing more jukes. It almost burned him the one time where it led to a turnover in the neutral zone, but if he's consistently making things happen, you can handle the turnovers every once in a while. That's just comes with the territory of a player who has that much skill. And obviously, the only way he's going to know how to pick his spots better is by trial and error and by experience and by doing it more. So I was happy to see him get comfortable because, we've all been mostly happy with his defensive game so far this year, but outside of a couple bank shots, he hasn't done a ton offensively. So yeah, I'll take that as at least one big positive of the game, is seeing as that was something he was trying more.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot recently, but it really is remarkable to see how much the work on the fundamentals has improved Simon Edvinsson as a player from training camp to now. He doesn't look like a different player. He's still playing his style, but just with a little bit more refinement, a little bit more of the right pace, and a little bit better decision making. There's a ways to go still, but you can tell by watching him, this guy's going to be a good player. They have him on the right path.
Cool calmness and confidence about his game. Like, he's very silky, and when he gets his game refined, it's going to be quite enjoyable to watch.
So that's the Red Wings 2 games since we last spoke. They have 3 left on the season. Tomorrow, Monday night, April 10th, against Dallas, 7 p.m. Eastern at the LCA. That is the season closer at home for Detroit. And then they have 2 on the road to wrap up. Tuesday against Carolina at 7 Eastern. We'll be back with you on Wednesday. And then the final game of the season is at Tampa Bay in Florida at 7 p.m. Eastern as well. And then that's the Red Wings season. So we're almost there. That said, let's look at the standings. The Red Wings are currently sitting 23rd right now in the NHL in reverse order. So these are the Connor Bedard Lottery standings: Columbus, Chicago, Anaheim, San Jose, Montreal, Arizona, Philly, Washington, Vancouver, and then Detroit. So that is Detroit in 10th spot in the Connor Bedard Lottery standings. Vancouver has 79 points. Washington has 77 points. Detroit has 80. All 3 of those teams have 79 games played. St. Louis, who's in 22nd overall, has 81 points, only one more than Detroit, and Detroit has a game in hand. So, Detroit can move here. They could move up or down. They're not Philly's out of the question, so the lowest they could finish is 25th, so 8th best lottery odds, or more importantly, 8th in terms of pre-draft or pre-lottery draft standings. But that's what folks will be watching towards the end of the season. And it's not like the Red Wings have an easy schedule to close out. Like Dallas, Carolina, Tampa Bay, those are all teams who are not necessarily all playing for something for positioning, but those are teams who are all gearing up for the playoffs at the very least. So not going to be easy marks for them. So if you're rooting for the draft lottery standings, by all rights, it looks like Detroit could settle in this 10th, 9th, or even 8th spot. So we'll see.
Can I nitpick?
Yeah.
I want to nitpick a little bit because I know Prashant, Ken, and I were talking about this a bit in the live episode. We do not, and we should not, as a fan base, care about the draft lottery odds. It's not happening. We've been hurt before. Prashant phrased it the best yesterday. He's been hurt enough times before to know what to expect. And a 5% to a 3% difference, who cares? I am not thinking about the lottery odds. You shouldn't be thinking about the lottery odds. You listening shouldn't be thinking about the lottery odds. The only reason we should care about tanking right now is just the actual pick that it ends up being, because this is a draft where there could be a significant difference between 8th and 11th if you really want to focus on positional preference. There are going to be some centers in the area of what the Red Wings need. So if the higher they climb in the lottery odds, the more likely they are to get a Will Smith and Oliver Moore, whoever you are focusing on as a player of need for the Red Wings.
Yeah, that's essentially what the focus is. It has to be. If you're sitting here hoping based on like at best 1 in 33 chance or whatever it might be for the Red Wings, all the power to you. But mathematically, historically, the vibes, it's all bad in terms of winning the draft lottery. It's just not what this season is for Detroit. And that's okay. You saw what it was like playing against Montreal, and they currently have the 5th best odds. It's a whole different, stratosphere. Let's look at the wild card standings, though, because those are really interesting. In the East, Florida, the Islanders, and Pittsburgh are in this race where everyone's holding in lockstep. I made fun of them a little while back that they were all kind of stumbling over each other while the Islanders were the only ones doing anything. Florida and the Islanders are both at 91 points. Pittsburgh is one spot outside the wild card, also with 80 games played like the other two with 90 points. Buffalo has 2 games in hand, but has 85 points, so they, outside shot or whatever. But this could get interesting. It is in Detroit's best interest for the Islanders to fall out. So with 2 games left for Florida, the Islanders, and Pittsburgh, you want Pittsburgh to win, you want Florida to keep winning, and you need the Islanders to falter a little bit, at least.
Pittsburgh has both Columbus and Chicago as 2 of their remaining games, so their strength of schedule could not be any easier.
The Islanders
right
do
there
have
with them on that one.
Yeah, the Islanders have Washington and Montreal, though, so it's going to be the ultimate tank on either side of these games, as their opponents are looking forward to Connor Bedard. And as we await for the final standings in the East Division, the final wild card spot in the West isn't settled. But hey, Seattle, first time in history, they clinched a playoff spot. Historic. Actually, really impressive, their turnaround this season.
It took them twice as long as Vegas.
That's right. Yeah. Vegas has really set an unreasonable standard.
I know. If it wasn't for Vegas, this Seattle making the playoffs in year 2 would be a massive deal, because all expansion teams of previous eras, if they made the playoffs in the first 5 years, they were a remarkable franchise. Now Seattle gets the 7th seed in their second year, and everybody's like, oh, that's cool, I guess. Neat.
Let's jump to the AHL quickly. Obviously, we know Carter Mazur has made his professional debut with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and some kind of debut it's been. Through the first 5 games, 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 points. Awesome to see from Carter Mazur, and continues to kind of be that player who has been consistently impressive since being drafted by the Red Wings through his NCAA career, and now with Grand Rapids making an impression at the end of the season. So, small sample size, we always say don't blow things out of proportion, but for him to come in and immediately make an impact and get that production going is a continuation of a lot of green flags, so to speak, for Carter Mazur.
And even though it's only been a handful of goals, the fact that he's continued to produce in different ways, which was his big strength in the NCAA, is a really, really good sign to see. At least in a small sample size, it has translated up levels.
Quite honestly, one of Detroit's most interesting prospects, even if he's, if he ends up as like a middle 6 energy winger, or a guy who can play up and down the lineup as like a Bertuzzi light, that's obviously a phenomenal outcome for the kind of player he was drafted as and where he was picked. But I think there's a world of opportunity for him to come into this lineup, and I don't even know that we or the Red Wings know where his true ceiling is. So his progression will be really curious to watch. And I've said before, and I'll say again, he's probably my pick for an outside shot to make some noise at Red Wings training camp next season. Speaking of prospects, Amadeus Lombardi in the OHL playoffs, Saginaw and Flint are going to Game 7, but through 6 games. He has actually the same stat line, 3 goals and 2 assists. So he's continued to do well, and seeing him in a playoff atmosphere, seeing any kind of Red Wings player prospect in meaningful games right now. And I don't mean just like end of season, this is nice, but meaningful games, also good to see.
Yeah, he's had a good series so far, and it might be all for naught with the Game 7 tomorrow night. And, again, we just talked about sample sizes with Mazur, but a Game 7 sample, that's not a bad indicator of how much a player can perform under pressure. And, Lombardi's had a good series and a very hotly contested series. I think that might have been the 4-5 series, actually, in the OHL's West Conference. So if Lombardi can come out with all the pressure and have a huge game, that's an absolutely phenomenal sign if it happens, because, we're obviously very pleasantly surprised with his entire season so far. So let's hope he can do the exact opposite of what Windsor did.
Keeping it in the OHL playoffs, and just to rip off the Band-Aid here, you're already smirking, Brad. This is so annoying. Devastating to me, the hometown Windsor boy. The 1 seed Windsor Spitfires and Shane Wright get upset with the sweep 4-0 at the hands of the Kitchener Rangers. Brad, even Evan here, actually, take your shots. You win. Ugh.
I don't need to do too much smack talk, because the OHL has been around for a really, really long time. So anytime something happens that has literally never happened in league history before, that's all I need. First time an 8 seed has ever swept a 1 seed in the OHL. And Kitchener coming out on top of that, that'll get me through the offseason.
Shane Wright has so much narrative working against him now again. After slipping in the draft and after not playing a lot at the start of the Seattle season and eventually going back to the OHL, it's not indicative of who he's going to be as an NHL player, of course, but people are going to be talking about that. Until he does something to shake that off, that's going to be the latest tag on Shane Wright, which is supposed to be NHL caliber player, can't help best team in series win a single game.
He had 3 points, so it's not like he was terrible, but even watching this series, he didn't look like Shane Wright in that series. And don't get me wrong, Kitchener was better than a usual 8 seed, just because they loaded up in the middle of the season and just they could never get it together. And it looks like it started to come together late in the season, or at least in that series. Because if you remember, coming out of the World Juniors, the whole conversation around Shane Wright was Kingston still had his rights, but Kingston was awful this year, and Seattle didn't want to send him to junior to, go get beat up on every night in Kingston, and they wanted him to go to a top team, have a good year, go on a deep playoff run. So I can't imagine how the Kraken are feeling right now to see Windsor, pay an absolute haul to get him, and they acquired a bunch of other players just to go out in the first round, not even winning a game. The Kraken can't be happy. They really can't, because this is the exact opposite of, this is exactly what they were hoping to avoid, was his season to end early.
Good for Kitchener. Shane Wright has a big offseason ahead of him. Probably Coachella Valley is his next stop, but an interesting a player to watch outside of Detroit. Jumping over to the Frozen Four, Qunnipiac continues to shock and continues to impress. After beating Michigan in the semis, tied the game late against Minnesota and won, 10 seconds into overtime to take the Frozen Four title?
10 seconds into overtime, right off the rush. Absolutely insane.
Good for them. I love college hockey so much. It is so incredibly hyped up, and that was such an impressive run by Qunnipiac.
Their first ever national championship. Buddy who scored the goal pulls the Solani Selly, chucking the glove, shooting it down as all his teammates mob him. Absolutely love it. I mean, state of Connecticut, they kind of got college sports cornered right now, because UConn gets the national basketball championship, and then Qunnipiac gets hockey a couple weeks later. Got to be riding an all-time high in that state.
Yeah, Quinnipiac used to be like an absolutely terrible hockey program as well, and so they've obviously really turned it around. So hats off to them to to go up against the likes of Michigan and Minnesota and take that home. So college hockey was great this year.
All right. And jumping over to some NHL news again. Loath to have it happen against the Detroit Red Wings, but Sidney Crosby reached 1,500 career points in that game against the Red Wings, so that was a big NHL marker. And the Boston Bruins, again involving the Red Wings, they tied, and probably by the time you're listening to this will have passed, but the 95-96 Red Wings obviously had the record for most wins in an NHL season with 62, and the Bruins have already tied that with games left to play. So the Bruins are a historically good team. And Brad, you're checking the score right now. I think they're up late against Philadelphia. What was it, 4-2 last I checked?
4-3, 3:30 left. But the crazy part of this game might not be them getting the record, assuming they are going to get it shortly. The crazy thing in this game is David Pastrnak shoveling in a hat trick to get to 60 goals on the year.
60 goal scorers.
David Pastrnak, 60 goal scorer. Eat your heart out, Austin Matthews.
Unreal. And McDavid's at 64 with 2 games left, is it? 2 hat tricks in a row. Just do it, Connor. Give us a 70 goal scorer.
Well, McDavid's at 150 points. First guy to do that since 96, and only the 6th player in NHL history to ever do that. This season's insane. It sucks that our team isn't in the playoffs and isn't more relevant, because I don't think as fans we truly appreciate just how many batshit good storylines there are in the league this year. Obviously we hate the Bruins, but like them setting the wins record in an age of salary cap and parity, I understand, no ties, shootouts, whatever. Still crazy. Pastrnak, McDavid breaking 60 goals. Edmonton has 300-point scores. Seattle makes the playoffs as the second-year expansion team. Like, just an absolutely absurd level of what the hell is going on in a lot of the best ways imaginable.
One of the crazy storylines to me is Connor McDavid if he gets one more goal, he ties the season high for Ovechkin's total goals in a season. So the fact that the greatest goal scorer of all time could get passed by Connor McDavid in terms of single season goals that's just crazy to me. That Connor McDavid just decided this year he's going to just beat everyone, have the most goals in the league, and he'll just do it because he wants to.
Leon Draisaitl's a really great interview. Obviously, like all world hockey player, but he like a fantastic interview, and he said a lot over this past offseason. I remember him telling Friedgen Merrick, McDavid can score like or better than anyone else in the league. He just has to be a little bit more selfish. And Draisaitl and Edmonton were pushing McDavid to do that for a while, and it really does, like Evan, you're right, it really does look like McDavid just up and decided to, I'm going to do this. Not that it comes with no effort. I don't think anyone who's at the pinnacle of a sport comes in and exhibits no effort. McDavid works his ass off. He has a reputation for that. But you're watching something special. Like, Matthews as a pure goal scorer, absolutely, like, probably going to be the best of his generation, or unless McDavid decides he's not, Ovechkin will go down as probably the greatest goal scorer of all time. And you're watching a guy who can replicate what they're doing and also put up 80, 90 assists on the other side of it. Like, it's not normal. Like, it's a freakish thing, and he's like one of one on the planet who can do this right now, really. I don't know how there's any other way to describe it. And you're right, Brad. What a great time to watch hockey, because you have this team who really at one point in the season didn't have it all together and wasn't looking like they might even be in a secure playoff spot. And now they could be the favorites, even compared to Colorado, or let's say they come out of the West and they're facing Boston in the East for the Cup Finals. Like, would you really want to play Connor McDavid in the Stanley Cup Finals? Like, it is so exciting to watch. Well, I hope we get to watch a lot of playoff games with him.
I'm going to just into that statement of, do you really want to play Connor McDavid?
Period.
Full stop. I don't want to do that in the preseason, if I'm being honest. Forget regular season or playoffs or Stanley Cup final. And Vegas is playing their backup goalie because Leonard's out for the season. Makar just got hurt for the Avs. Who knows when Landeskog's going to be back? The West is wide open. If Edmonton is ever going to do it, this is the year. They have 300-point scorers. They have a wide open conference. They have McDavid playing at a level of hockey we may have never seen and may never see again. So, you know, I'm not saying they have to because they'll never get another chance, but man, it'll be hard to say they're ever going to have a better chance than they currently do.
Yeah, we're about to enter what is the best season of all, which isn't spring, but playoff hockey season. And really the first round where like every single hour of the night there's a game happening is, in my mind, one of the best experiences in sport, period. Still breaks my heart that the Red Wings aren't yet in it, although we're getting there, and we'll talk about that in the season in review. But that's the NHL news for now. Again, like we said, folks, this is a little bit of going to be a shorter episode, so we're not done yet. We want to actually quickly recap here a few things, some special announcements. But Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA. First of all, so that is the best weather we've ever had for one of those. I don't know who called in a favor for that, but thank you. The weather that the Masters needed at Augusta National came over to Detroit. What a gorgeous day for opening weekend. So really thankful for that. And yeah, we can't have asked for a better event. You all sold out 500 tickets with like a month in advance, which has blown our minds. You raised so much good money for the Jamie Daniels Foundation. We saw thousands, like literally thousands of you at our merch table in the concourse at Little Caesars Arena before the game. We had thousands of items of merch to hand out and they were all gone. So to all of you who came back, this wasn't your first event, or for those of you who met us for the first time and waited in line to come see us at that table right under the Gordie Howe mural, thank you so much for coming out. It means the world to us. We hope you enjoyed the rally towels and things, and it was a really great meeting you all. And yeah, the post-game event went great. The live episode was awesome. The drinks were flowing. The doors of the beer garden were open. Had some nice weather in there. Everyone had their sweet Winged Wheel Podcast Detroit Red Wings co-branded hats on. And I don't know, we are getting better at doing them every time, and it made me so excited for our next one starting next season. I had a blast. Ken wanted to extend his thank you as well. So obviously that live show featured Ken Daniels, and he's always so blown away by all of your support. So again, thank you to all of you.
No, yeah, it's crazy. Every event, I still have the mentality, I'm going to show up, we're going to walk up to our table, and we're going to stare across at an empty room. Cause it just blows me away. Why do people listen to us? Why do people want to meet us? But every time it's incredibly humbling. It's incredibly appreciated. It's so much fun. I say this in the best way imaginable, for all the good reasons you can imagine. By the time the event's over and I walk out of that arena and I get into a quiet area, my social battery is just at zero. Like there is nothing left. And again, all good reasons, just getting to meet and talk with all of you before the game, after the game. It was just amazing. And, I know a bunch of you, we're talking to Mika and Hank, and, you recognize them, give them high fives. And it's worth noting, like, that makes their day. They're a little shy meeting new people for the first time, but afterwards, it's all they can talk about. They absolutely love it. Mika's like, Dad, why do people know me? It's like, you're a big deal, kid. You're a big deal. And she rides that high for like weeks on end afterwards. So yeah, I can't say thank you enough. It's just absolutely insane every time. And it doesn't ever seem to wear off.
And even though we're totally gassed by the end of those days, I think it actually does recharge us to keep pushing forward with the podcast and see where we can continue to improve and what can we do bigger and better next. So I know I sound horrible right now. I fell asleep watching the Masters. But these meetups, they only get me more excited to continue to do this. And it's all thanks to everybody who shows up for those events or tags us and stuff with some of their merch for the podcast. Like you guys, it blows my mind, and I have pinch me moments all the time.
So speaking of growing the show and bigger and better, one thing we've been, this is something we've been talking about for a long time, but we wanted to do it the right way, which was expand Winged Wheel podcast content in a way. And this show isn't going anywhere, and we're going to continue to build on what we've built. And unfortunately, we haven't figured out how to add more hours in the day. But what we have figured out a way to do is add folks who have the same values in terms of quality content that we want to put out. So I guess this is the launch of a, Winged Wheel podcast network of sorts. So a new show produced and brought to you by the Winged Wheel podcast, but hosted by Prashanth Iyer and Sean Shapiro, is called Expected by Whom. And yes, that is the Mickeyism that you heard at a previous Winged Wheel podcast night event. Expected by Whom is a new hockey podcast that's going to explore the world of hockey and the NHL through some unique lenses, like advanced analytics and uncovering the human side of hockey. So it's going to be all across that spectrum. Obviously, we know what Prashanth brings in statistical analysis of the game and its strategy, and Sean's incredible ability to write. He writes for his Substack Shap Shots, and has uncovered a lot of cool stories, like, for example, Jake Walman, the international free agent and the lover of Texas Roadhouse. So those two are going to have an excellent show. We're really excited that it's coming in under the Winged Wheel podcast kind of umbrella of content. Thrilled to be a part of it, and they're very excited too. So we announced that at the event. So we're really excited for you all to tune in. Next Thursday is going to be the first, or this Thursday, I should say, will be the first time it records. So the episode won't post too long after that. So stay tuned for more on that. And I believe they already have the Expected by Whom Twitter handle. So go give them a follow as well. So even though Winged Wheel Podcast Day at the LCA is all wrapped up, and the Red Wings season soon will be, there's a lot of good stuff to come. Expected by Whom, our Red Wings season in review, the draft content is going to start to kick into high gear. Just because it's the off season doesn't mean it's the off season for us yet. So we're really, really excited for this summer full of content, and appreciate you all sticking with us. And if you're tuning in for the first time, I promise you we don't always sound this tired. And as we speak, the Boston Bruins have set the NHL record for most wins in a season with 63. So a Red Wings record falls that stood for quite some time. All right. Let's jump into overtime here on this shortened episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Overtime and all good things that the Winged Wheel Podcast is able to do is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, so to speak, you get access to our Winged Wheel Podcast official Discord. You're entered into all of our giveaways automatically. We've given away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game this season, and the vast majority went to Patreon supporters. Not only that, you also get access to our Patreon exclusive bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones, where we answer any questions that didn't make the main show. We let loose, have fun, and just generally hang out. It's a good time. So let's take some questions from patrons here. The first one from, let's start from with Jonathan Melwish here, saying, did Hank enjoy his first NHL game?
Oh, he was on sensory overload the whole time. He had the best time ever. You could tell he's only 3, so about 10 minutes left in the third period, he was just wiped. He was kind of starting to nod off in his chair and started looking around. But yeah, with everything going on, and he eventually did get his second win, I'm sure, as everybody heard in the live recording after. Yeah, he was absolutely loving every second of it.
From Apple Ciders here, they say, imagine the draft gods smile upon the Red Wings and they end up getting Bedard or Fantilli. Where do they slot in game 1 of next season?
Second line center. And I don't think there's really a debate for anywhere else.
Maybe third line center if they want to shelter them a little bit, but yeah.
No, they can't. Look at Ryan.
I know.
Second line center.
Trying to be a cool guy here. The follow-up, and you're going to want to answer this one, Evan, is also, what are your opinion on Live team logos on the Masters polos?
So part of the deal with Live players and their apparel is their team logo or name, or their team logo has to be on their apparel. So it is what it is, I suppose. But yeah, at first I was like, I don't think Dustin Johnson went to Alabama, because his team logo looks exactly like the Alabama A. It's Bush League. I'll say that.
What? How many? 4 or 5 of them finished in the top 10, though?
Yeah. Phil Mickelson turned back father time and put up an all-time performance today, but they didn't get the win.
Coyote season tickets in Tempe has a really good draft question saying, I keep seeing Zach Benson being compared to Braden Point. I've also seen many writings stating that Zach Benson is not a center in the NHL. Both can't be true, so which do you all believe is the case?
I don't think he's Braden Point. I know Braden Point is always the one everybody points to when they're a small center. I don't think he plays a super similar style to Point at all. I could see him ending up at either the wing or center when he gets to the NHL, because he's not super fast and he doesn't have an elite shot, which means it's going to be tough for him to create offense, but he's really good on his edges. He plays really quick, and he's super smart. You know, it's always easier for us to relate him to Red Wings players. So if you're looking for a style comparison, who does this guy play like? And then you can kind of argue where he'll center. He has a lot of Jonathan Berggren traits to him. He plays faster than Berggren does. And obviously, if you're getting picked in the top 10, the goal is to be a lot better than Jonathan Berggren, which I think he will be. But in terms of, he doesn't have a good enough shot to create goals from a distance, and he's not fast enough to burn guys to create goals. Look at a lot of the ways Berggren's able to create offense. That's what you're going to get a lot of from Zach Benson, just with a little more dynamic elements to his game.
All right, this question from Joseph. Ryan Hanna's professor at his Big Time Fancy Doctor School. Thank you, Joseph, for your ever-entertaining usernames. Says, thanks for a great weekend, fellas. Congrats on all of your success and cheers to a bright future. Coming this fall, the Firkin Catalina wine mixer. The question is, so there's a bunch of right-handedity available in the upcoming free agent class as of now, according to Cat Friendly. You've got your old men like Eric Johnson, Shattenkirk, and Strawman, who are a hard no. You've got your guys who will likely be overpaid or priced out of the second D-pair role like Severson, Klingberg, Dumba. You've got your guys who might be seeing inflated importance by taking advantage of being on a good teams like Scott Mayfield, Ratko Gudas, and Connor Carrick. So you don't really know what you're going to get. Then there's the corpses of Luke Schenn and Dylan McElrath. That leads us to perhaps who could be an unheralded diamond in the rough. So tell us about quintessential guy, Calgary's Michael Stone. Stay fresh, cheese bags. Oh, Calgary will bring him back.
Oh, Calgary once bought Michael Stone out only to re-sign him in that same summer. So I have a hard time ever seeing him leave Calgary, but quintessential guy. Absolute bomb of a shot and not much else to write home about. So sure. I don't know. For what the Red Wings are missing, I'm leaning towards Mayfield or Gudas as the targets. Cause one, I think they'll be pretty cheap, all things considered. And I don't think they'll require a lot of term, and they do kind of answer what the Red Wings need right now, albeit in a very mediocre, unspectacular way, but so did Olli Maatta last offseason, so sometimes those can work out for you.
Yeah, and you know what? As I think about this team and you really start to think about the holes that they have, first of all, there are too many for it to be an ultra-competitive team, but there aren't so many in the past where when people would ask us, what are the holes in this roster, and we'd all just chuckle and say the roster. First, I think of that third pair, which was just too many games exposed. Like, you can't run Hag Lindstrom next year or Hag Osterley or whatever it is. Like, if you're serious about trying to move forward into that wild card spot, you have to have three viable pairs. And yeah, you need something to fill in the gap that Hronek left. Hronek obviously had the best season of his life with the Red Wings before being traded to Vancouver, but that second pair right D spot, I don't know. You never know what the free agency market is going to bring. But yeah, the way it's shaking out, Severson will probably be priced out. But if Yzerman can sneak in there and get him for something reasonable, I would love to have Severson, but I agree. Mayfield. I know Max has brought up Mayfield. I know Ken on the live show brought up Mayfield, and I really do agree. I think he'd be a great fit. And Ratko Gudas, you love to hate that guy, but having him on your team would be excellent. And the Red Wings do lack snarl. One of the parts of the conversation of, was it great that Dylan Larkin skated away from the play to go, punch Jeff Skinner, is it sucks that it has to be your captain sending that message. It's not a bad thing, like great leadership from your captain, depending on your opinion, but really you should have a guy who isn't one of the most important players on your team in terms of actually putting the puck in the net. So Radko Gudas would solve some problems there. Evan, get off your damn phone and pay attention for once. Says, how big of an effect does the psychology of a curse/bad karma in places like Toronto or Vancouver have on team success? If you could hypothetically go back to last year and flip the rosters of Toronto and Tampa Bay in their first round matchup, would the outcome also flip, or would the psychology of the curse ensure that the team with the maple leaf on their chest always has a significant disadvantage? There's more to the question here, but in general, I'll say this. For players who have been there and have expectations, it's a real thing. Like, the mental weight of expectation in those kinds of cities is absolutely palpable. I don't know really in North American sports what the comparison is. I don't know that there is a comparison that's as raw, as significant as, like, the weight of the curse or the expectations in Toronto with the Maple Leafs.
What it really does is it adds a ton of pressure, and it really exposes those who can handle the pressure and those who can't.
That said, like, it goes down to every level too. Like, every single mistake. Like, that's what the playoffs are about. You have to win 16 games. You're never going to win 16 games flawlessly. It's all about attrition. I mean, I know people are going to get sick of this, but look at how the Masters started. John Rahm won, and he started with what, a 3-putt, a 4-putt on the first hole. Like, it was about buckling down and just playing your game, and that's what you have to do in the playoffs. But when you're the Leafs, for example, or you're Vancouver, and you make one blunder at a bad time when you're up 3-1 in a series, for example, just to name something random, completely random out of nowhere, it just gets magnified and it snowballs, and these guys get in their own heads. And I'll say this, it's not just the players, it's the coaches. Like, the coaches are a part of it too. Like, they have a much bigger task than other coaches in the NHL, keeping that room aligned. And I think as we get to a more player empowered, as we have been in a more player empowered era compared to, the Scotty Bowman rule with an iron fist era of coaching, like, they have a near impossible job when they have things like what Toronto has in front of them. That said, I think this is their best opportunity this year to move beyond the first round. Like, it is stacked in their favor with how Tampa is going right now. Give me a contract, boys. Says, hey guys, it was nice to see you yesterday at Winged Wheel Podcast Day, and I finally finished the hat signature with Evans. I will say I'm disappointed in folks. You didn't get Evan to sign enough things. I did not see his marker hand working hard enough, so we'll have to make up for that next event.
Certainly wasn't the all-time high of signatures, but it was decent. It was good. Enough for me, anyway.
What strategy to go with? Because I know you were joking around the day before of alternating your actual signature versus just writing Evan with a full fist on the marker.
Yeah, I sort of left that up to others what they decide, what they would want. But I think almost every single one I did my actual signature. So if people want me to whip out the caveman signature, I can do that too.
Those who got our holiday cards this year got the caveman signature.
They did.
A little hockey question says, looking at the draft class, is there anyone who early on you think is too highly rated and someone you think is too lowly rated or rated too low? Love the show. Keep up the great work.
It's tough to say because it all matters in context. And I don't think I've ranked enough prospects yet to have enough context of, ranking players against each other to really have a good feel for that. I haven't got deep into the, late first, second round guys yet. So there's not really one guy that I'll say should bump up yet. I've only started doing my preliminary research on him, and we haven't done the prospect profile yet. I have concerns about where Reinbacher is ranked. I think the vibe I'm getting is way too many people are saying if he just has that, Moritz Seider breakout on offense, then you've got a stud here, which is true. But it's also important to remember Mo Seider is the heavy exception to that rule, not the norm. So, not to say it can't happen, but I think the combination of him being a right D playing in a weird league in a very light defense draft has probably shot him up more than, at least to this point, I would say is justified. Now that I've said that, you can write with pen who the Red Wings are taking with their first pick. But that'd be my answer for now. Once I get a bit, deeper on his profile, I'm hoping that it changes my answer.
Is Mo Seider to, highly ranked prospects from non-traditionally like top 5 hockey countries what Braden Point is to talented but tiny forwards in the NHL draft?
I'd say it would be worse if there was only more players who fit that description.
Yeah, our saving grace here is that there aren't a lot of people in the former's mold, but much like I'm so tired of the Braden Point comparable, we're probably getting there. And it's funny as Red Wings fans because we don't see it because we're just enjoying Mo Seider and then whatever other colossus talented defenseman Steve Yzerman has brought in. But I'm sure there are fans and folks covering teams from across the league who are banging their heads off the table because they're like, no, you can't predictably replicate the Mo Seider process. No, not everyone is Mo Seider. No. Anyhow. Okay, folks, like I mentioned, we are going to have a bonus episode hopefully before our midweek episode, which will be the audio of the live recording of the Winged Wheel podcast day at the LCA. Again, if you had tickets but did not pick up your special Red Wings / Winged Wheel podcast co-branded hat, send us an email from the email address that you used to buy your tickets with your name and how many tickets to pod@wingedwheelpodcast.com. We want to give a special shout out to the Detroit Red Wings who have been incredible partners in organizing now 4 Winged Wheel podcast days or nights at the LCA, raising some incredible money for the Jamie Daniels Foundation. Prashant Iyer, all of our significant others for helping to make those days a success. If you go to them, you'll understand why. We're just the meatheads who wander around smiling, and then they're ones who make things happen. Sean Shapiro for coming in and helping with the announcement of Expected by Whom, and all of you, the 500 of you who sold out tickets and the thousands of you who came by at the merch table. Again, thank you so very much. We're excited to do more of these in the future. In the interest of Evan's eyeballs, we're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you all for tuning in. We'd like to thank all of our supporters on Patreon, including our name-level sponsors, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Bertuzzi is Straight Up Missing, Nick Perks, We Are Geelong, the greatest team of all, Glenn Brabham, Aiden White, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Croner's Left Knee, Arjun, Babe Landeskog, Carl Bruttanen Nanuski, Chimmy, Chris P, Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Coyote Season Tickets in Tempe, Denny's, Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Detroit Rob, DJ Denton, Give Blood Fight Probert, Hank's Energy, Hassan Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood, Kevin James, King Tone, Las Ensaladas Picantes, Marcus, Matt McKay, Matt Penzine, Michael Edlund, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Red 3, Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Send It Seawolf, That's What I Appreciates About You, Tyrone Bigham's Mystery Snout, Walman's Elite Dancing D, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, #1 Detroit Red Guys fan, Aaron, Adam Gowitzka, Adam Rose, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Antonio Gracias, Ben Barron, noted Phillips Adina Whisperer, and Alex Nedeljkovic Truther, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, CJ Wilkinson, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Dios mío, donde esta to do me hero? Oh no, thanks Reed. Evans, 2018 Kitchener Road Puddles, Frank Stanley, George's biggest fan, Grand Rapids hockey guy, Griffey boy, instructions unclear, cheesebag no longer fresh, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, John Ingalls, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Matt Keeler, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Norris Seider, Ophelia, Steven, Tatar Sauce, The Hodag, and Hunter. Thank you all so very much, and we'll be back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.